The sun hung low in the sky over Willow Creek, casting warm golden rays across the quiet streets of the small town. It was one of those peaceful afternoons where nothing seemed out of place. Just another day in a close-knit community where everyone knew each other's names. Walter Hayes walked slowly along the sidewalk, his polished black shoes clicking softly against the pavement. At 85 years old, Walter carried himself with dignity despite his age. His gray suit, though slightly faded from years of wear, fit him perfectly, and his silver-tipped cane helped steady his steps. Walter had been heading to his favorite spot in the park, a bench shaded by tall oak trees where he loved to sit and watch the world go by. For decades, this routine had given him comfort. Sometimes he would bring a book or simply enjoy the breeze that rustled through the leaves above him. Today, however, something felt different. As he approached the crosswalk near Main Street, the usual calm of the neighborhood was broken by an unexpected sound, a loud roar growing louder with every passing second. At first, Walter thought it might be a car speeding down the road, but when he turned his head, he saw it wasn't a car at all. A motorcycle rounded the corner, moving far too fast for the residential area. Its rider leaned forward aggressively, gripping the handlebars tightly as the engine screamed like a wild animal. The bike gleamed under the sunlight, its black frame adorned with red flame decals that made it look more like a weapon than a vehicle. Walter froze for a moment, unsure if the rider even noticed him standing there. He raised his cane instinctively, waving it slightly to catch the biker's attention. But it was too late. The motorcycle didn't slow down. Instead, it barreled straight toward him, tires screeching as the rider tried and failed to swerve out of the way. The impact sent Walter sprawling backward onto the hard pavement. Pain shot through his body as he landed awkwardly, his cane clattering uselessly beside him. Gasping for breath, he lay still, staring up at the blue sky above. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. Voices shouted in the distance, growing louder as people rushed to help. Someone knelt beside him asking if he was okay, but Walter could barely hear them over the ringing in his ears. Meanwhile, the biker skidded to a stop several feet away, kicking up dust and gravel as he brought the motorcycle under control. He climbed off clumsily, pulling off his helmet to reveal a scruffy face framed by unkempt dark hair. His name was Jake Miller, and he looked just as shocked as anyone else at what had happened. Jake hesitated for a moment, glancing between the fallen man and the growing crowd of onlookers. Then, reluctantly, he stepped closer to Walter, muttering, under his breath, "Hey, I didn't see you." One of the bystanders, a middle-aged woman clutching her purse tightly, snapped back at him. "Didn't see him? How could you not see him? He was right there." Her voice trembled with anger as she pointed accusingly at Jake. Others joined in, their voices rising in unison. "Call 911, someone shouted. "You shouldn't even be riding so fast in this neighborhood," another added. Jake held up his hands defensively, trying to calm the angry mob forming around him. "Look, it was an accident," he stammered. "I'll call an ambulance, okay? Just let me—" But no one listened. They were too focused on Walter, who lay motionless on the ground. Several people kneeled beside him, checking for injuries and reassuring him that help was on the way. Despite the pain coursing through his body, Walter managed a weak smile, whispering faintly, "It's all right. I'll be fine." Unbeknownst to anyone at the scene, events were about to take a sharp turn. Walter's son, Marcus Hayes, was already en route to visit his father that day. Marcus was a decorated colonel in the U.S. Army, known for his leadership, skills, and unwavering sense of duty. After years of serving overseas, he had finally taken leave to spend some much-needed time with Walter. What none of the townsfolk realized, however, was that Marcus wasn't traveling alone. Accompanying him was a team of elite soldiers, men and women trained for high-stakes operations, capable of handling any situation they encountered. As Marcus drove into Willow Creek, his phone buzzed with an urgent text message from a neighbor. "Your dad got hit by a biker on Main St. Ambulance is on the way." Marcus's heart sank. Without hesitation, he sped toward the location, his mind racing. With worry, beside him, his team exchanged concerned glances but said nothing. They knew better than to interrupt Marcus when he was focused. When they arrived at the scene minutes later, Two black SUVs screeched to a halt near the chaos. Out stepped Marcus, towering over the crowd as he surveyed the situation with a cold, calculating gaze. He wore civilian clothes, a plain black jacket and jeans, but his military bearing was unmistakable. Behind him, 5 members of his team emerged, their movements precise and coordinated. Instantly, the murmurs of the crowd fell silent, replaced by whispers of awe and apprehension. Marcus spotted Walter immediately, lying on the ground surrounded by concerned neighbors. Pushing past the onlookers, he knelt beside his father, his expression unreadable. Walter blinked up at him, his lips curling into a faint smile despite the pain. "Marcus," he whispered hoarsely, "don't do anything rash, son." But Marcus's jaw tightened. Turning to his team, he gave a series of quick orders. 2 soldiers stayed with Walter, ensuring he received proper medical care until paramedics arrived. Meanwhile, the others moved to surround Jake, cutting off any chance of escape. Jake's eyes widened as he realized he was trapped. Wait, he protested, backing away nervously. "It was just an accident, I swear." Marcus ignored him, stepping closer with deliberate strides. His voice was low but firm as he spoke. "You'll answer for what you've done." For Jake, the nightmare was only beginning. Little did he know this seemingly ordinary accident would unravel secrets far greater than he could have imagined, and drag him into a dangerous game he wasn't prepared to play. The moment Marcus Hayes stepped closer to Jake Miller, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd of onlookers fell silent, their eyes glued to the imposing figure of Walter's son. Marcus wasn't just any man. He carried himself with authority, his every move deliberate and calculated. His dark brown eyes locked onto Jake, who looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Stay where you are," Marcus ordered sharply when Jake instinctively took a step back. Jake froze, his hands still raised in surrender. Sweat glistened on his forehead despite the cool afternoon air, and his breathing quickened as he realized there was no escape. Marcus turned briefly to check on his father. Walter lay on the ground, his face pale but calm. 2 members of Marcus's team, Lisa Bennett, a medic, and Ryan Carter, a tech expert, were already tending to him. Lisa gently propped Walter into a more comfortable position, while Ryan monitored his vitals using a portable device. Walter gave Marcus a weak nod, silently urging him to stay focused. With his father temporarily stable, Marcus refocused his attention on Jake. "What's your name?" he demanded, his tone clipped and cold. Jake," the biker stammered, swallowing hard. "Jake Miller." Marcus studied him closely. Jake was young, probably in his late 20s, with messy dark hair and a scruffy beard. His leather jacket, adorned with patches from various outlaw clubs, screamed trouble. But Marcus didn't care about appearances right now. All that mattered was getting answers. "What were you doing speeding down this street?" Marcus pressed, taking another step forward. "I wasn't paying attention," Jake admitted, his voice trembling. "I swear it was an accident. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." The crowd murmured angrily at his words, some shouting insults or accusations. Marcus ignored them, focusing solely on Jake. He motioned for one of his teammates, Derek Cole, to search Jake's belongings. Derek nodded and approached cautiously, keeping his eyes on the biker as he patted him down. "Hey, what are you doing? You can't just," Jake protested, but Marcus cut him off with a glare. "You don't get to make demands here," Marcus said firmly. "Not after what you've done." Derek found a backpack strapped to the side of Jake's motorcycle and began rifling through it. At first it seemed like ordinary junk, a water bottle, a pack of cigarettes, a lighter. But then Derek pulled out something unusual, a flash drive labeled with strange symbols. He held it up for Marcus to see. "What's this?" Marcus asked. Holding the flash drive between his fingers, Jake's face went pale. For a moment he didn't say anything, his eyes darting nervously between Marcus and the flash drive. Finally he muttered, "It's nothing, just some files." Marcus wasn't convinced. He signaled for Ryan to take a look at it. Ryan crouched nearby, pulling out a small laptop from his bag. Within seconds, he connected the flash drive and began scanning its contents. The screen lit up with encrypted files, blueprints, and coordinates. written in code. This isn't nothing, Marcus growled, turning back to Jake. Explain yourself. Jake hesitated, clearly debating whether to lie again. But under Marcus's piercing gaze, and surrounded by armed soldiers, he cracked. Okay, he blurted out. It's not mine. I was supposed to deliver it to someone tonight. That's all I know. Deliver it to who? Marcus demanded. I don't know their names, Jake insisted. They call themselves the Iron Fangs. They're dangerous, all right? If I don't show up with that thing, they'll come after me. The crowd gasped at the mention of the Iron Fangs. Even in a quiet town like Willow Creek, everyone had heard rumors about the notorious gang involved in illegal activities ranging from drug trafficking to arms smuggling. Marcus exchanged a glance with his team. This was bigger than a simple hit and run. While Jake continued to ramble about how he'd been forced into working for the gang, Marcus made a decision. Turning to Elena Torres, the sharpshooter of the group, he gave a quick order. Secure him. We'll deal with him later. Elena nodded and moved forward, grabbing Jake by the arm. She twisted it behind his back, forcing him to kneel on the ground. Jake winced but didn't resist, knowing full well that fighting back would only make things worse. By now, paramedics had arrived, rushing to Walter's side. Lisa stepped aside to let them work, though she stayed close to ensure her patient received proper care. Walter tried to reassure Marcus once more, his voice weak but steady. Son, don't let this consume you. Focus on what matters. I will, Dad, Marcus replied softly before straightening up. His expression hardened as he addressed his team. We need to figure out what's on that flash drive, and fast. Whatever the Iron Fangs are planning, we can't let it happen. Ryan continued analyzing the data, his fingers flying across the keyboard. These blueprints look like schematics for weapons, he reported. Advanced stuff, and these coordinates point to an abandoned warehouse outside town. Marcus frowned. A meeting spot? Probably, Ryan confirmed. Looks like they're making a deal tonight. Without wasting another second, Marcus formulated a plan. Elena, keep an eye on this guy. Derek, prep the vehicles. We're heading to that warehouse. What about Walter? Lisa asked, glancing toward the ambulance where medics were carefully loading him onto a stretcher. He'll be fine, Marcus said, though his voice betrayed a hint of worry. We'll finish this quickly and come back. As the team prepared to leave, Marcus spared one last glance at his father. Walter gave him a faint smile, mouthing the words, "Be careful." Marcus nodded, then turned away. There was no time to waste. The Iron Fangs weren't going to wait, and neither could he. Back at a safe house on the outskirts of Willow Creek, the team regrouped to strategize. Jake sat tied to a chair in the corner, looking increasingly agitated. He kept muttering under his breath, occasionally glancing at the soldiers with fear in his eyes. So let me get this straight, Marcus said, pacing in front of Jake. You're a low-level runner for the Iron Fangs, delivering packages without asking questions. Is that correct? Jake nodded miserably. Yeah, pretty much. They told me if I messed up, they'd kill me. I didn't have a choice. Marcus stopped pacing and leaned in close, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Everyone has a choice. You chose to work with criminals. Now you'll help us take them down. Jake's eyes widened. Wait, what? I already told you everything I know. I'm just a delivery guy. Not good enough, Marcus shot back. If you want to walk away from this alive, you'll cooperate fully. Understood? Jake swallowed hard but nodded reluctantly. Meanwhile, Ryan worked tirelessly to decrypt the remaining files on the flash drive. Each new piece of information painted a clearer picture of the Iron Fangs operation. Blueprints revealed designs for cutting-edge weaponry capable of causing mass destruction. Communication logs hinted at connections to corrupt officials within the government. It was clear that this wasn't just a local gang. It was part of something much larger. We're dealing with professionals, Ryan warned the group. This isn't going to be easy. Marcus clenched his fists, his mind racing. He knew the risks involved, but he also knew they couldn't back down. Not after what happened to Walter, not after seeing the kind of danger lurking in their own backyard. All right, listen up, Marcus said, addressing his team. Tonight, we shut them down. No mistakes, no mercy. Let's move. One by one, the soldiers nodded, their faces set, with determination. They may have been outnumbered, but they were far from outmatched. With Marcus leading the charge, they were ready to face whatever came next. And so, as night fell over Willow Creek, the stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything for better or worse. The drive to the abandoned warehouse was tense and silent. Marcus Hayes sat in the passenger seat of the lead SUV, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. His mind raced as he replayed the events of the day, the accident, Jake's confession, and the disturbing contents of the flash drive. Every detail pointed to one thing. The Iron Fangs were planning something big, and they had no intention of stopping. Beside him, Ryan Carter worked furiously on his laptop, decrypting more of the files they'd recovered from Jake's backpack. These blueprints are insane, Ryan muttered under his breath, shaking his head. This isn't just regular weaponry, it's military-grade tech. If these guys get their hands on it, we're talking about chaos on a massive scale. Marcus clenched his jaw but said nothing. He didn't need to hear how dangerous this mission was, he already knew. What mattered now was stopping the Iron Fangs before they could complete whatever deal they had planned for tonight. Behind them, the second SUV followed closely, carrying the rest of the team. Elena Torres drove, her sharp eyes scanning the darks, rode for any signs of trouble. Derek Cole sat beside her, checking his equipment and ensuring everything was ready for the operation. Lisa Bennett and another teammate, Sam Miller, sat in the back seat, discussing strategies quietly. Jake Miller, still tied up and visibly nervous, occupied the very back of the convoy. He hadn't said much since being brought along, though his wide eyes and trembling hands spoke volumes. He glanced out the window occasionally, his expression a mix of fear and regret. For the first time in his life, Jake realized the gravity of the situation he'd gotten himself into, and there was no turning back. When they finally reached the outskirts of Willow Creek, the warehouse came into view. It was exactly as described, in the coordinates, a crumbling structure surrounded by overgrown fields and rusted chain-link fences. Faint lights flickered inside, casting long shadows that danced eerily against the walls. The place looked deserted, but Marcus knew better than to trust appearances. "All right, everyone," Marcus said, climbing out of the vehicle. "Gear up. We move in 10 minutes." The team sprang into action, each member knowing their role without needing further explanation. They gathered near the edge of the field, using the tall grass as cover while Marcus outlined the plan. "Ryan, you stay here with the tech. Keep monitoring those files and feed us intel as we go. Elena, take point. Derek, set charges on the exits if things go south. Lisa, you're with me. We'll secure the main chamber where the exchange is supposed to happen, got it?" Everyone nodded, their expressions grim but determined. "What about him?" Elena asked, nodding toward Jake, who sat slumped on the ground nearby. "He stays with Ryan," Marcus replied. "If anything happens to us, he's your ticket out. Use him however you need to." Jake flinched at Marcus's words but didn't protest. He knew better than to argue. As the team prepared to infiltrate the warehouse, Ryan handed Marcus a small earpiece. "Stay connected," he said. "I'll guide you through the layout based on what I've pieced together so far." Marcus clipped the earpiece to his collar and gave Ryan a firm nod. Then, signaling to the others, he led the way toward the warehouse. The approach was slow and methodical. Elena moved like a ghost, her footsteps silent as she scouted ahead. Behind her, Derek carried a duffel bag filled with explosives, ready to seal off any escape routes. Lisa stayed close to Marcus, her medical kit slung over one shoulder and a pistol holstered at her side. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with tension. Shadows moved behind cracked windows, and faint voices echoed through the halls. The team paused outside a side entrance, listening carefully. "Two guards near the door," Elena whispered, pointing to two figures standing casually beside a stack of crates. Their rifles hung loosely from their shoulders, suggesting they weren't expecting trouble. Marcus signaled for Derek to handle them. With practiced precision, Derek crept forward, unsheathing a pair of throwing knives. In seconds, both guards were down, silenced before they could raise the alarm. The team slipped inside, sticking to the shadows as they made their way deeper into the building. The interior was even darker than expected, illuminated only by dim overhead bulbs that buzzed faintly. Crates lined the walls, some open and spilling over with advanced weaponry, grenades, assault rifles, and other tools of destruction. "This is bad," Lisa murmured, her voice barely audible. "Really bad." Marcus nodded grimly. If the Iron Fangs managed to sell these weapons, countless lives would be at risk. There was no room for error tonight. Ryan's voice crackled in Marcus's earpiece. "You're getting close to the main chamber. Be careful, there are at least 6 hostiles inside, including the leader." "Copy that," Marcus replied softly. Turning to his team, he motioned for them to split up. Elena climbed onto a catwalk, above the chamber, positioning herself for a clear shot if needed. Derek planted charges near the doors, ensuring no one could leave once the confrontation began. Meanwhile, Marcus and Lisa approached the entrance, staying low and out of sight. Through the partially open doorway, they could see the leader of the Iron Fangs, a towering man with a scarred face and cold, calculating eyes. His name was Victor Kane, according to Jake's earlier confession. Beside him stood a cloaked figure whose identity remained hidden beneath a hood. They were negotiating with a buyer, their voices low, but urgent. "Weapons like these don't come cheap," Victor said, gesturing to the crates surrounding them, "but I assure you they're worth every penny." "And what about delivery?" the buyer asked, his voice muffled by the hood. "Already arranged. Just transfer the funds and we'll make sure everything gets where it needs to go." Marcus exchanged a glance with Lisa. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for. Without hesitation, he gave the signal. Elena fired the first shot, taking out one of the guards with pinpoint accuracy. Chaos erupted instantly. Guards scrambled for cover, shouting orders and returning fire. Marcus and Lisa burst into the chamber, guns drawn, cutting down anyone who stood in their way. Victor barked commands to his men, his voice booming over the din of gunfire. "Take them out, now!" But the team was ready. Derek detonated the charges, sealing off the exits and trapping the gang inside. Elena continued picking off targets from above, her aim flawless. Lisa provided covering fire, allowing Marcus to advance toward Victor and the mysterious buyer. "You picked the wrong night to mess with us," Marcus growled, leveling his weapon at Victor. Victor sneered, unimpressed. "Do you even know who you're dealing with, soldier? You think you can stop this? You're too late." Marcus didn't respond. Instead, he lunged forward, engaging Victor in hand-to-hand combat. The fight was brutal, each punch and kick fueled by anger and determination. Despite Victor's size and strength, Marcus held his own, driven by the memory of his father lying injured back in town. Finally, with a well-placed strike, Marcus knocked Victor to the ground, pinning him down. Breathing heavily, he pressed the barrel of his gun to Victor's forehead. "It's over." Nearby, the cloaked figure attempted to flee, only to be intercepted by Lisa. She yanked back the hood, revealing a middle-aged man with slicked back hair and a smug expression. "Corrupt official," she spat, cuffing him quickly. With the gang subdued and the evidence secured, Marcus radioed Ryan. "Mission accomplished. Call it in." As the sound of distant sirens grew louder, Marcus allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They'd done it. They'd stopped the Iron Fangs. But deep down, he knew this victory came at a cost. His father's injuries were a reminder that evil often struck where it hurt most. Still, Marcus couldn't afford to dwell on it. Not yet. There would be time to reflect later. For now, justice had been served, and that was enough. The safe house was quiet except for the hum of electronics and the occasional click of keys as Ryan Carter worked tirelessly on his laptop. The team had returned after dismantling the Iron Fangs operation at the warehouse, but their work wasn't done yet. Evidence needed to be processed, suspects interrogated, and loose ends tied up before they could breathe easy. Marcus Hayes stood near the center of the room, his arms crossed as he watched Jake Miller squirm uncomfortably in his chair. Despite everything that had happened, Jake still hadn't given them all the information they needed. He'd admitted to being a low-level courier for the gang, But Marcus knew there was more to it. Someone like Jake didn't stumble into something this big without knowing at least part of the bigger picture. "Let's try this again," Marcus said, pulling up a chair and sitting directly across from Jake. His voice was calm but firm, leaving no room for excuses. "You've already told us about the Iron Fangs and tonight's deal, but you're holding back. What else do you know?" Jake shifted nervously, avoiding eye contact. "I swear I've told you everything. I'm just a delivery guy. They don't tell me anything important." Marcus leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Jake's. "Then explain why your backpack contained detailed blueprints and encrypted files. That doesn't sound like something a delivery guy would carry." I don't know," Jake stammered, his voice rising in panic. "They gave it to me and said not to ask questions. Look, I'm nobody, okay? Just some guy trying to make a buck." Marcus sighed, leaning back in his chair. He glanced at Lisa Bennett, who stood nearby observing the interrogation. She gave him a subtle nod, silently agreeing that Jake wasn't lying about his limited role. Still, Marcus couldn't afford to take any chances. "All right," Marcus said, finally standing up. "We'll come back to you later. For now, think hard about whether there's anything else you can tell us. Your cooperation might save your life." As Marcus walked away, Jake slumped in his chair, looking defeated. Elena Torres stepped forward and dragged the chair, with Jake still tied to it, into a corner of the room. Out of sight, but not out of mind. Meanwhile, Ryan continued analyzing the data recovered from the flash drive. Blueprints, communication logs, and financial records painted a chilling picture of the Iron Fangs' operations. They weren't just a local gang. They were part of a sprawling network connected to corrupt officials and international crime syndicates. "Check this out," Ryan said, turning his laptop so Marcus could see the screen. On it was a map marked with several locations across the country. Each pin represented a potential hideout or storage facility used by the gang. "This confirms what we suspected," Marcus muttered, studying the map closely. "They're planning to expand. Those weapons weren't meant for one buyer. They're building an arsenal." Ryan nodded grimly. "And these coordinates match shipments scheduled for the next few weeks. If we don't act fast, they'll move everything and vanish." Marcus turned to Derek Cole, who was busy organizing equipment in preparation for their next move. "Derek, how long will it take to set charges at these sites?" Derek glanced at the map and did a quick mental calculation. "Depends on how many teams we split into. With enough explosives, we can hit 2 or 3 locations simultaneously, but we'll need backup if things go sideways." "We'll call in reinforcements," Marcus decided. "Lisa, contact HQ and request support. Tell them it's urgent. We can't wait for authorization." Lisa nodded and stepped aside to make the call. While she spoke quietly into her phone, Marcus addressed the rest of the team. "Elena, you're with me. We'll handle the largest site. It's likely their main hub. Derek, take Sam and cover the secondary targets. Once we neutralize these locations, we cut off their supply lines and cripple their operation permanently." Everyone acknowledged the plan, their expressions resolute. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. They trusted Marcus implicitly, knowing he wouldn't lead them into danger without good reason. Before leaving, Marcus checked in on Walter one last time. The hospital staff assured him that his father was stable and recovering well, though it would take time for him to fully heal. Sitting beside Walter's bed, Marcus felt a mix of relief and guilt. "You should have seen me, Dad," Marcus said softly, gripping the edge of the chair. "I lost control today. I almost let anger get the better of me." Walter, despite his weakened state, managed a faint smile. "Anger isn't always a bad thing, son. It's what drives us to protect what matters. Just remember, you're not fighting for revenge. You're fighting for justice." Marcus nodded, absorbing his father's words. Walter had always been his moral compass, guiding him through even the darkest moments. This time was no different. "I won't let you down," Marcus promised. Back at the safe house, the team prepared to deploy. Vehicles were loaded with weapons, explosives, and supplies. Communication devices were tested to ensure everyone stayed connected during the mission. Jake remained tied up in the corner, watching silently as the soldiers moved with precision and purpose. "Ready?" Marcus asked, glancing at each member of his team. "Ready," they replied in unison. With that, they headed out into the night, determined to finish what they'd started. The first target was located in an industrial district miles away, a sprawling compound surrounded by high fences and security cameras. Elena scouted ahead, disabling cameras and clearing paths for the others. When they reached the perimeter, Marcus signaled for silence. The air was thick with tension as they slipped through an opening in the fence, moving swiftly toward the main building. Inside, crates filled with weapons lined the walls ready to be shipped out. "Plant the charges," Marcus ordered, keeping watch while Derek and Elena worked quickly. Minutes later, the charges were set. As they retreated, Marcus triggered the detonator remotely, sending a deafening explosion through the compound. Flames engulfed the building, destroying everything inside. At the same time, reports came in from the other teams. Secondary targets had been neutralized as well, cutting off key links in the Iron Fang's chain. By dawn, the operation was complete. Dozens of arrests had been made, including Victor Kane and his associates. Evidence gathered from the raids implicated high-ranking officials, exposing corruption that reached far beyond Willow Creek. Marcus returned to the safe house exhausted but satisfied. They'd dealt a crippling blow to the Iron Fangs, ensuring they couldn't harm anyone else. Still, Marcus knew the fight against evil was never truly over. There would always be another threat, another challenge to face. For now, though, he allowed himself a moment of peace. His father was safe. His team was intact and justice had been served. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Weeks had passed since the takedown of the Iron Fangs, and life in Willow Creek was slowly returning to normal. The news of the operation spread quickly, making headlines not just locally, but across the country. People spoke about Colonel Marcus, Hayes and his team with admiration, calling them heroes who had saved countless lives by stopping a dangerous criminal network. But for Marcus, the fight wasn't over yet. While the physical battle against the Iron Fangs had ended, the legal process was just beginning. Arrests had been made, evidence gathered, and charges filed. But bringing down such a powerful organization required more than just brute force. It demanded patience, strategy, and an unshakable commitment to seeing justice served. The trial took place in a federal courthouse, a grand building with towering pillars and polished marble floors. Inside the courtroom, tension hung heavy in the air. Rows of seats were filled with spectators, many of them residents of Willow Creek eager to witness the outcome of the case. Reporters lined the back of the room, scribbling notes and snapping photos. Cameras flashed intermittently, capturing every moment of the historic event. At the center of it all stood Marcus Hayes. Dressed in a simple black suit, he looked every bit the soldier-turned-advocate, his presence commanding respect even among strangers. Beside him sat a team of lawyers and investigators who had worked tirelessly to build a rock-solid case against the Iron Fangs. On large screens behind them, evidence was displayed for everyone to see. Blueprints of advanced weaponry, encrypted files detailing illegal transactions, and surveillance footage of the gang's activities. In the defendant's area, Victor Kane sat handcuffed, his scarred face twisted in anger. He glared at Marcus with pure hatred, refusing to show any sign of remorse. Around him, other members of the Iron Fangs and their accomplices, including corrupt officials exposed during the investigation, sat quietly, their expressions ranging from fear to defiance. As the proceedings began, the prosecutor called Marcus to the stand. Stepping forward, Marcus recounted everything that had happened, starting with the day his father was hit by Jake Miller. His voice was steady and clear as he described the discovery of the flash drive, the infiltration of the warehouse, and the subsequent raids on the gang's hideouts. "Colonel Hayes," the prosecutor asked, "can you explain the significance of the evidence found during these operations?" Marcus nodded. "Yes. These documents and blueprints prove that the Iron Fangs were planning to distribute highly advanced weapons capable of causing mass destruction. Their goal was profit, regardless of the cost to innocent lives. And what role did the defendants play in this scheme? Victor Kane was the leader of the Iron Gangs. Under his command, they orchestrated illegal arms deals, bribed officials, and threatened anyone who stood in their way. Without intervention, they would have succeeded in arming criminals and endangering communities nationwide. Victor interrupted suddenly, shouting from his seat, "This is ridiculous, you have no proof." The judge slammed her gavel, silencing him. "Order in the court," she barked. Marcus continued calmly, unfazed by the outburst. "We recovered extensive records linking Victor Kane and his associates to these crimes. Every piece of evidence has been verified and authenticated. Next, the prosecution presented testimonies from witnesses, including Jake Miller. Though initially reluctant, Jake eventually agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced charges. On the stand, he admitted to being a courier for the gang and provided details about their operations. "They told me I didn't need to know much," Jake said nervously, avoiding eye contact with Victor. "But I saw things. Meetings, shipments, money changing hands, they're bad people and they'll do whatever it takes to get what they want." The final blow came when Ryan Carter testified. Using technical expertise, Ryan broke down the wall, encrypted files, and explained how they revealed the Iron Fang's plans. Diagrams and maps were shown on the screens, leaving no doubt about the scale and danger of the conspiracy. Throughout the trial, Marcus kept his focus on one thing: ensuring that justice prevailed. He thought often of his father, Walter, who was still recovering in the hospital. Walter's words echoed in his mind. "You're fighting for justice, not revenge." Those words gave Marcus strength, reminding him why he'd taken on this mission in the first place. Finally, after days of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman stood to deliver the decision. "We find the defendants guilty on all counts," he announced, his voice ringing out clearly. Cheers erupted from the gallery, while the defendants slumped in defeat. Victor Kane clenched his fists, muttering curses under his breath, but there was nothing he could do. Justice had been served. Later that evening, Marcus visited Walter in the hospital. His father looked better, sitting up in bed with a book resting on his lap. When Marcus entered, Walter smiled warmly. "How did it go?" Walter asked, setting the book aside. "It's done," Marcus replied, pulling up a chair. "Kane and his crew are going away for a long time." Walter nodded approvingly. "Good work, son. I'm proud of you." Marcus hesitated before speaking again. "It wasn't easy, Dad. Seeing what they were capable of, it made me realize how fragile peace really is." Walter placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "That's why men like you exist, to protect it. Just remember, true strength isn't about winning battles. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard." Marcus smiled faintly, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to relax. Outside, the sun set over Willow Creek, casting a golden glow over the quiet town. Life here would never be the same, not completely, but thanks to Marcus and his team, it was safer. And sometimes that was enough. The weeks following the trial brought a sense of closure to Willow Creek. The Iron Fangs were dismantled, their leaders behind bars, and their plans for destruction thwarted. News outlets hailed the operation as a major victory against organized crime, crediting Colonel Marcus Hayes and his team for their bravery and dedication. But for Marcus, the real reward wasn't public recognition. It was knowing that he had made a difference. Walter Hayes had been discharged from the hospital after recovering from his injuries. Though he still walked with a slight limp and relied heavily on his cane, his spirit remained unbroken. Every day, he returned to his favorite spot in the park, the same bench where he'd spent countless afternoons before the accident. For Walter, it was a place of peace, a reminder of simpler times when life felt predictable and safe. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Marcus joined his father at the park. He carried 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Walter as he sat down beside him. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. Birds chirped softly in the background, and the distant laughter of children Playing added to the tranquil ambiance. "Thanks for coming," Walter said, taking a sip of his coffee. "It's good to have you home." Marcus smiled faintly. "It's good to be here, Dad. I've missed this, just sitting with you, no missions, no chaos." Walter chuckled softly. "You've earned some peace, son. You've done more than anyone could ask of you." They sat quietly for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant shades of orange and pink. It was a rare moment of calm in what had been a whirlwind few months. Marcus thought back to everything they'd been through, the accident, the investigation, the raids, and finally the trial. Each step had tested him in ways he hadn't anticipated, but it had also strengthened his resolve. "You know," Walter said after a pause, "I used to wonder if I raised you right. If I taught you enough about standing up for what's important, without letting anger cloud your judgment." Marcus turned to look at his father, surprised by the sudden admission. "Why would you doubt that? You've always been my guide, Dad. Everything I am, I owe to you." Walter shook his head gently. "No, son. You became who you are because of the choices you made. Yes, I tried to teach you values, honesty, courage, compassion, but it's how you applied them that matters. Seeing you take charge, protect others, and fight for justice, and it makes me proud." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't used to hearing such open praise from his father, whose love had always been expressed through actions rather than words. But now, sitting side by side on this quiet bench, Marcus understood just how much Walter admired him. "What's next for you?" Walter asked, breaking the silence. "Are you going back to active duty?" Marcus hesitated, thinking carefully, before answering. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to return to the army, to keep serving, keep protecting. But another part of me wants to stay closer to home, maybe find a way to make a difference here in Willow Creek." Walter nodded thoughtfully. "Either path is honorable. Just follow your heart, and you'll never go wrong." As the sun sank, lower, casting long shadows across the park, Marcus reflected on his journey. From the moment Jake Miller's motorcycle collided with Walter, his life had changed irrevocably. What started as a personal mission to protect his father had grown into something far greater, a fight against corruption and evil that transcended borders and ideologies. But despite the challenges, Marcus knew he wasn't alone. His team had stood by him every step of the way, risking their lives alongside him. And then there was Walter, whose wisdom and resilience inspired him daily. Together they had faced adversity and emerged stronger. Eventually the conversation shifted to lighter topics. They talked about old memories, family vacations, holiday dinners, and funny stories from Marcus's childhood. Laughter replaced, the weight of recent events filling the space between them with warmth and joy. When darkness began to fall, Marcus helped Walter to his feet. "Let's get you home," he said gently. Walter nodded, leaning on his cane as they walked slowly toward the parking lot. As they reached Marcus's car, Walter stopped and placed a hand on his son's arm. "Whatever you decide to do next," Walter said, his voice steady and sincere, "know that I'll support you. Always." Marcus met his father's gaze, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Dad. That means everything to me." Later that night, as Marcus drove home, he found himself reflecting on the future. The world was full of challenges, and there would always be battles to fight, but for now he allowed himself to feel at peace. Willow Creek was safe again, his father was recovering, and justice had been served. He thought about the team, Ryan, Elena, Derek, Lisa, and Sam, and how they had become like family to him. Their bond had been forged in fire, tested by danger, and strengthened by shared purpose. No matter where life took them next, Marcus knew they would remain connected. As he pulled into his driveway, Marcus stepped out of the car and looked up at the star-filled sky. For the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. The road ahead might be uncertain, but he was ready to face it, one step at a time. And so, under the watchful eyes of the stars, Marcus Hayes prepared to write the next chapter of his story, not as a soldier or a hero, but simply as a man determined to live with integrity, honor, and love.